Yo, what's up, everyone? Chilling with Deke. We're back. And excuse any just background noises because I'm actually recording this intro. I'm driving on my way to work. And that is actually Jeff James' agency. So if you have any insurance questions or protection needs, hit me up. And this episode's pretty special. I mean, it's with one of my great friends, mentors, Jeff Winters. He pastors a church, Freedom Life Center, and I started going there probably 7-8 years ago, and I loved it. Like as soon as I went there, and I started getting a little more involved, going to like a Wednesday night Bible study, and then that led to me and Jeff actually coaching middle school basketball together. And then, like, since that point, I just got more and more involved, started drumming, helping out with the youth group. And these past probably 7 or 8 years, it's been probably some of the best, most funnest, freeing times of my life. And a big part of that's due to Jeff, all the time he's poured into me and just caring about me, sharing wisdom, information. And, yeah, I mean, big thanks to him. And I'm honored to have him on the podcast. It's been long overdue, but better late than never, So I'll put a plug in for my church. It's pretty awesome. You should check it out. Obviously, I drum, so there's a good reason to come. But yeah, freedomlifecenter.org. It's just Freedom Life, and then hit ctr.org. And then if you just want to stop in, we're on Old Clarendon Road. Sorry, just right past Atrias. You'll be able to find it. Church on the right, green sign, Freedom Life Center. But yeah, other than that, stay connected with me, chillingwithdeke.com, at chillingwithdeke on social media. And yeah, like I said, again, thanks to Jeff for coming on and just being part of my life and pouring into me. And I think we are ready to start the show. Chilling with Deke. We are back, and I'm with Jeff Winters, my pastor, one of my great friends, mentors, and you have been probably the most name drop person on the podcast thus far, and we haven't even done a recording. Exactly. and some of your wisdom's dropped all throughout.
Let me just start off by apologizing for my cough. I got a little bit of cough going on, but we'll maybe you could edit it out as we.
Yeah. It won't be a problem.
Yeah,
it won't be a problem.
Sounds good. Well, you've interviewed a lot of my friends.
Exactly.
So it's good to know that you're talked about a little bit, at least in the good side sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, even they name drop you too. Yeah. Like bring up some of the stuff that you tell them and share to everyone.
Right.
So I want to start off, I mentioned this to you, we went out to eat. Back when you were 18, a big event happened in your life. Your father passed away.
Right.
Can you take me back to that period and why it was so eventful? You were really big into football. I know your dad was a reason why. What did that do for you? Like, what was going on in your life? You just graduated high school, right? What was going on, and what made that just an impactful? Obviously, having a dad pass away, but like for you personally, just what was going on right there?
Yeah, let me start out by saying, I listened to the basketball player for University of Michigan, Austin Hatch.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about he only had 2 bad days in his life. He was actually in 2 plane crashes, and in those 2 plane crashes, he lost his entire family. And to hear him say he only had 2 bad days in his life, I really started thinking about my life and thinking, that's kind of like me. I really only had 2 bad days. When I lost my dad, and then when I lost a son. And so you're asking about the first one, losing my dad. I grew up, in the 70s, graduated in 1979. It was a normal childhood and everything, but I was an athlete. My dad was, like any dad, was proud of his son playing sports, playing basketball, playing football. And what I didn't realize at the time, it took a while after my father passed away, that I was really living my life kind of for my dad, which I think that's true of a lot of young boys, living to make him proud of me, to please him. And so I played sports because I liked him, but I also knew that, he was so proud of me. And then the summer before my senior year, it was July 4th. We were in a pool together, and he was getting ready to leave for work. He was going to Philadelphia to work, and he asked me if I'd come with him. And I said, Dad, I want to stay here. My friends are here, plus football's starting. And so I didn't go with him. And July 7th, 3 days later, he passed away. He had a heart attack. And so going into my senior year, I was going to be the starting quarterback of the football team. And to top it all off, our school went on strike. And it was the longest, I think people have told you this.
Going back to episode 1. Yeah, this story's all connecting. Yeah.
Probably the longest school strike in Pennsylvania history. The whole senior year we were on strike. And that's important for the story in a bunch of different ways. One of the ways is, I was playing sports. Because I wanted my dad to be proud of me. And now my dad wasn't even there. And the second thing, you're at school, and, the school is, you're doing really well. Our team was fantastic, but we got no accolades or anything, because we weren't in school. And so my senior year was kind of even though I was a starting quarterback on the team and we did really good, it's kind of anticlimactic for me in the sense that I didn't really know why I was even doing it. I had lost my dad. And my mother would come to the games. Mm-hmm. One story she told me that someone saw her and from the other team that she knew. And my mother's name is Aggie. And she said, Aggie, is your son playing on the team? And she said, yeah, he plays. And they said, well, what position? And she said, I don't know, but he's number 19. And they looked and they said, well, he's the quarterback. She said, oh, yeah, that's what it is. Kind of didn't even know this such an important position.
Yeah.
So went through that whole senior year like that. And, my father not being there, like I said. And then I graduated, and Pete went off to play football in college, and our running back, good friend Joe Berkovich, went off to play football in Maryland, and other guys went to Louisville and different places. And so, I got my coach to get me in a school to play football, and it was IUP. Mm-hmm. So I went to IUP, and I went there for 2 weeks of training camp, and school started, and I'll tell you, it was I was a kind of a lost young man at the time. I didn't know even why I was there. I didn't love football. I played football because I knew my dad was proud. Right. But I didn't love football. And I was there, and it was basically a kind of a teacher's college. I thought I didn't want to be a teacher, and I didn't know why I was there. So I ended up going to the coaches and telling them that I was going to leave school and this wasn't for me. And so I did. I left, came back home to Pittsburgh. And the funny thing is that I was still doing things kind of to make my dad proud. I went to his boss. He worked for Prudential. Mm-hmm. Went to his boss. I was 18 years old. Went to his boss and told him that I was interested in maybe selling insurance. And so this was on a Friday, Eric. This is really interesting. On a Friday, he said, okay, well, come back Monday and wear a suit. I said, okay. So I came back Monday and I wore a suit. I thought, well, he wants a proper interview or whatever. And I didn't know. I was only 18 years old. And I went in that Monday and he hired me on the spot because of his relationship with my dad. And so I started selling life insurance at 18. Mm-hmm. So I know what you're going through now.
Exactly. So how hard was that for you to make that decision to leave school?
No, it was actually really easy, to be honest with you. Yeah. Because I was like, I was, the only way to describe it is lost, But I think a lot of young people I thought that was I was maybe, maybe that was special to me. But I come to find out a lot of 18-year-olds, they don't know what they're going to do, what they're going to go. And, Brock's 18, my second son, and he's thinking about college and he doesn't know where he wants to go or what he wants to do. And, that's just part of being that age. So it was pretty easy for me, but I was lost doubly because I didn't have, my dad, that's kind of solid force in your life to kind of guide you and help you. So I was just kind of out there.
I mean, you mentioned whenever you came here to Prudential looking to, I guess, still please your dad, trying to sell insurance. When did that eventually, I guess, fade away, or you started to, I guess, find your own path or what you wanted to do?
I'm not sure it ever goes away, Eric. I'm not sure. I mean, you're a son.
Yeah.
I think all sons, what we want most in life, throughout our life, no matter what age, we want our fathers to be proud of us. So I still think, even though my dad's not here, I still hope that no matter what I'm doing, that I'd like to think my father would be proud of me.
Yeah.
I think everybody wants that. So I think it goes away, personally.
Well,
I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, that kind of goes back to what we talked about a couple weeks ago whenever we were down at the Steeler game having some beers at Southern Tier. That's the one thing every son wants to do, is make their father proud. And what were you saying? What's the thing the father wants to hear?
I think I think every father wants to know that they're significant in their son's life. They want to hear, Dad, it's because of you I'm this man. Because of you, I achieved this. It's because of you. It's because of what you poured into my life. I think every father wants to know that now I'm a dad now, and I want to know, I'm significant in my boy's life, that I did well as a dad. Because here's the thing, as a dad, we all know our failures. We all know we're not perfect. And so we long to hear from our kids, you're a good dad. Thanks for all you poured into me.
Yeah. Why do you think that's tough? Just like both ways, it's usually like that relationship's tough sometimes. We've talked about that.
Eric, you watch movie after movie after movie, right? And so many movies are about the estranged relationship between a father and a son. I don't know why it's like that. I just don't know. I don't want it to be that way with my children. So, I think that we all have immaturities in our life, and we need to grow out of those. And I think for a lot of dads, it's hard for them to even tell their kids they're sorry for things they may have done wrong. It's kind of like, I'm the dad. I shouldn't be the one saying that or whatever. I should be the son, but that's not maturity. Maturity is being able to say, I'm not perfect. Forgive me for this failure or that failure. I think that vulnerability, that's what builds real deep relationships, being vulnerable. And it's hard sometimes for adults to be vulnerable like that to their kids.
Yeah, because you being a dad, I'm assuming, obviously I'm not a dad, but trying to get into that perspective that you're looked at from your son, your kids, as like a superhero, like the person that's supposed to be the rock, like the stronghold, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. I think it changes. I think the superhero thing goes away at a certain age. Don't know what that age is. I don't think Brent and Brock, I don't think I'm a superhero anymore, but I think they have a good deal of admiration for me, a good deal of respect. But they're at the age now where they're starting to kind of spread their own wings and get out there and want to kind of do their own thing instead of challenge that authority. And so it may seem that there's a little tension in the relationship, but that's just natural. That's natural for, young men to go through that and test the waters and see, find out their own manhood and so forth. And I think once we get through that period, then hopefully that it kind of comes around full circle, maybe, Eric. I don't know.
No, I get what you're saying.
Not there yet, but
yeah.
I'm hoping that, not that my boys think, don't want to be around me. It's not that, I don't think. I think it's they want to have less rules from me, and they want to make decisions on their own. And then, the hard thing as a dad is seeing maybe what I might determine as a bad decision.
Yeah.
And then knowing that there might be some consequences and allowing those consequences to happen as part of growth, as part of the process. So yeah, being a dad is a challenging thing. For any sons out there that are listening that don't have kids, I would say, give your dad a break. He's not, he's not perfect. He's not, he may not even know how to come to you and say something like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
May not know how to do that. You may be the one who has to do that. And for the dads out there listening, I say, listen, suck it up, learn how to be humble. Learn how to be vulnerable. Vulnerability. Remember, I told you about that podcast, plug for TED Talk by Brene Brown.
Yeah. The
Power of Vulnerability. One of the most powerful things I ever heard is the only way to really make deep, lasting connections is being vulnerable. The idea that I took away from that podcast, that TED Talk actually, was this: is that if you're not vulnerable and you're being somebody that you're not. Think about that for a minute. You're being somebody that you're not. It's really this person that you're being doesn't really exist. You're being fake. Well, how could something that's not real enter into a real relationship? You can't do it. The only way to enter into a real meaningful, deep relationship is to be vulnerable, is to say, look, this is kind of who I am. I'm not trying to hide anything. I think here's what happens too, is that when we are that vulnerable person, what we find is someone will look at you and say, "Oh, you too." Mm-hmm. I didn't know. I thought I was the only one.
Right.
Right. You ever in school where I think you heard me say it before, right? A teacher says, "Listen, anytime you get lost, just raise your hand. I'll slow down for you." And right, and everybody's sitting there, and the teacher's just rattling on. Maybe you're in physics or calculus or whatever, and you're lost. You're looking around, and everybody looks like they're frantically taking notes. And finally, someone on the other side of the room raises their hand and says, "Look, I'm lost, and could you slow down?" And so the professor does, and there's like this collective sigh of relief in the room.
Yeah.
But no one wanted to be that person. Why is that? No one wanted to be that vulnerable person to say, hey,
I guess it's tough, right? It's tough. Because I guess we talked about it just a little bit when we were having lunch there. It's tough to open up and maybe share some of the things that you're uncomfortable with about yourself. Like, you don't want people to think you're weird or think the worst of you.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what you think. Right? You tell me if this isn't what we think.
Okay.
You think, if they knew this about me, they wouldn't want to be my friend.
Right.
So I can't tell them that. And the opposite is actually true. When they find that out, it's kind of like they think, wow, you're the same as me.
Yeah.
And it frees them up to be real and genuine.
Mm-hmm.
There's not too many relationships like that in life. It should be. They all should be like that. But we hold back. We hold back.
Yeah. How you interact with people and the friendships and relationships you've built, like I feel like you're able to do that. You're able to build these deep connections with people. Do you credit it to that, the vulnerability? Is there anything else that you think you do that you're able to connect with people on these certain levels and build these deep relationships? Or where does that come from? Or
I don't know exactly. I think that's probably I stumble into it sometimes, to be honest. I mean, but I try to keep that in mind. I try to, some of these catchy sayings that we have. In order to have a friend, you have to be a friend, and really it came from a lot of my, now that I'm pastoring a church and digging into deep truths of what it means to be human. And then try to unpack that for a church every Sunday. People think you speak out of what you're currently living. I always joke about, if I had to preach about what I was currently living, it'd be very small, right? But I can talk about these things that I'm actually going through in my own life, and so it helps. It helps to be able to If you could verbalize it, then you could start to maybe, live it, incorporate it into your life. Just hearing it. I wonder sometimes on Sunday morning, people just hearing it. I wonder if that really does. It probably does some, but something about like taking a subject and teaching it, and you really start to get it. You really start to. And so maybe for me, in being a pastor and preaching every Sunday, I think it's done probably more for me than anybody that ever come to Freedom Life Center. I think those things have been the catalyst for me to grow in my.
Because you're almost forced to then, right?
Yeah.
Because you're the one learning all this stuff and trying to teach it. So like you got to come up here and give a message. You got to give some type of message, right?
Exactly.
You keep implanting that stuff in your mind. There's got to be some type of change and growth.
Well, you come to church, so my message is a positive message, right? And because I believe that we should think on the positive. I believe the scripture even says that, right? And so I keep those things positive. So if I'm preaching positive, I'm thinking positive, hopefully then my life is lived out that way. I'm not dwelling on the negative. I'm not looking back at the past and things that I've, the negative things in life, but the positive and moving forward. Right. You can't, a couple Sundays ago, I was talking about, you can't drive forward looking in the rearview mirror. You've got to keep looking forward and keep growing and keep moving. And so being a pastor for me has been a time of I would call successful growth in my life, because you use the word forced, maybe it's not a bad word. Maybe I'm kind of forced, but it's good, because I want to keep growing. I never want to stay in the same place and think the same things. I think that's what happens in Christianity or in religion in general. We get this idea that there's certainty and we need to find the certainty. And once we've found the certainty, now just hold on to it. And I have it, so I'm okay. Well, the truth is that certainty is kind of an elusive thing, right? And, how can we be certain about, this omnipotent God that we serve, this omnipotent God that's out there, this divine being that goes beyond our comprehension? How could you ever say you know everything there is to know? And so, I think that in itself shows me that I constantly need to be growing and moving forward and learning and changing, and even my ideas about God should be doing that.
I remember actually whenever I first started coming here, there was a phrase, and I could see it in myself happening the more I came here. I think it's like the less I know, the more freer I become, just like in life in general, because it takes away that certainty. Like I know everything, and once that happens, then you're actually looking for new things to learn and grow and try to just expand your mind to different ideas.
I think I gave you the book to read by Peter Enns, The Sin of Certainty.
Yeah, you did. Or no, it was another book by him. But
well, this is another good one. But it's so many people get bogged down in this idea that it's certainty that we're looking for, right? And you'll find as you get older, you already are. You said there's less and less things that you're certain about, and you realize certainty is not even the goal anymore. It's about relationships and how certain are you in anything in relationships? Relationships are fluid. They're constantly, changing and moving and growing. And, you need to kind of ebb and flow with that. And certainty kind of, that's fundamentalism. It kind of makes you rigid and stiff and
almost like this relationship has to be this way, right? Whereas life is the opposite, right? People move, switch jobs.
Why would you assume that? So we talk about God in a we use language that evokes the idea of relationship, right? How we communicate with him and so forth. Well, what relationship do you have with another human that's not constantly changing and growing, right? And so why would a relationship with God then become a static thing? It should never become a static thing. As you and I walk through our lives together, we're constantly learning new things about one another. Right?
True. Yeah.
You're constantly learning, different things. I shared a couple things today. Maybe you knew a little bit about it, you didn't know. And so we learn new things, and that may change how you see me a little bit. Right. Mm-hmm. So same thing with God. It changes. We learn things about him and changes how we see him. And maybe we were told something about God early on, for whatever reason, when we were children. Mm-hmm. Maybe somebody inadvertently told us something about God, to get us to behave in a certain way. You better be careful not to do that, else God's going to fill in the blank. He's going to do something to you. And so, maybe someone wasn't intentionally trying to communicate to you the character and nature of God, but they did in what they were trying to get you to do. Mm-hmm. So maybe you grew up with this idea of that God is this God who's looking for you to mess up, and he's looking to when you do, he's going to punish you in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And so you have this idea that's who God is. That's his nature is punitive. His character is one of, he's a punisher. He's looking to, right. And hopefully you grow out of that. And you see that God's a loving God all the way through, from Genesis all the way through to Revelation. We see God is a merciful God. God is a loving God. God is a God who is patient, who is kind. And I say all these things because we know what God's like, because Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Mm-hmm. So all these things I'm saying, that's Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes hard then, right? Because for a long time, 5 years, 10 years, 20, sometimes 35 years, I thought God was a certain way. And now I'm hearing, maybe I was wrong. But no one wants to be wrong. They'd rather stick to that certainty. Oh, no, I'm sure, and we can't be that way. We constantly have to be growing.
Absolutely. So obviously we've been talking about just a little bit of you becoming a pastor, getting into that type of stuff. So what happened from you being in insurance? What was the next steps from there? You were doing insurance for 5-6 years, and then what did you decide to do?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of things in my life, but after, I'll tell you kind of the major things, bigger things, rather than little filler.
You went to college. I just want to mention this. You went to college. You were like an old man, huh?
Yeah.
Or like a 20
right now. No, I was your age probably. I was 25 when I went to college. But what happened was, after I left insurance and I moved to State College, Pennsylvania, and my brother-in-law, my sister, and their kids lived up there. And I moved up there with them, and I began helping him in a home building business. Kind of learned the trades through him. As then I was probably 25, and I went to Bible school out in Missouri. And it was during that time in Bible school that I felt this draw to do something big with my life, and being a missionary was really appealing. I remember there was a man down there in Springfield. He was just a great mentor to me. His name was Don Corbin. And I remember talking to him one day, and I said, I don't know whether, being a missionary is something I'm supposed to do. In other words, we use these words in religious circles like calling. I have a calling, and maybe other people use that too. But this idea of am I called to do that? Is that my lot in life? Is that what God wants me to do? Be a missionary, or is it just my sense of adventure that I want to go out and do that? And he paused for a minute and he said, "Well, who is it that gave you your sense of adventure?" I thought, wow, yeah, that's true. I mean, God made me a certain way. I try to tell my boys that, what do you love doing? How are you bent? What do you like? You're made that way for a reason, and we want to move and live and work and breathe in our gifting as much as we can. rather than say, well, these are my weaknesses, I'll work on my weaknesses, right? We want to move in our giftings as much as we can. Like you, Eric. I mean, you've been telling me now for a number of years, I think I want to get into sales. You're great with people. You know what I mean? You're fun to talk to.
Yeah.
It's kind of to me, I look at you and I think, yeah, sales, that's kind of a natural fit for you. You could, because the other people you see and go, oh, well, that person should never be in sales, right? not that there's anything wrong with them.
Right.
They just don't have that. They just don't walk up to a stranger and start talking to them.
Right.
Look at you doing podcasts, you know? What do you have to do to be in sales? Be able to talk to anybody, go anywhere, Yeah. So I think that's for me. I went to school, became a missionary, or studied to be a missionary.
Is there any reason you went to Bible school? Like taking that path from insurance to then doing the
well,
construction?
What happened was I went to a guy that I knew, and I told him that I wanted to get into, like, I didn't know how to say it back then, so I'm struggling now how to put it, because I don't talk this way now, but I'll just, I want to get into like kind of religious work or spiritual work, that sort of thing. And so that's when he said, well, maybe you should go to Bible school. I said, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm too old to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to go back to school. And so he let it go. And then, I don't know, a couple months later, he called me up and said he's taking a group of high school kids to a school in Missouri where he went to school. And he said, would you go with me and help me drive the bus? I said, sure, I'll go. I wasn't doing anything. And so helped him drive the bus down there, and went down there and met the basketball coach, right? And saw the school, and, one thing led to another. That was in like November. And I ended up applying to school there and went and started in January. Actually played on the basketball team there and went to school there. And so it all happened real fast. He had kind of an agenda having me go down there. He knew if I got down there, I might go. And here I talked to the basketball coach. And so all in all, I think it was a good experience, Knowing what I know now, I might have chose to do things a little differently, but it was still fine. It was good. Met a lot of nice people. My friend Chris, pastoring up in Michigan, was one of my roommates down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, great guy. So met a lot of nice people from there. And through that, I took a missions trip. So you may or may not ask about this, but I'll just throw it in there.
Yeah.
Took a missions trip, went to Zaire. And when I went to Zaire, I met a missionary there. His name was Dennis Tanner. And that's Michelle's dad. And so because of taking that missions trip, that later on I went to Europe and saw Dennis there again, met Michelle, and that whole story.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what happened? So done with Bible school, did you get right into, let's say, like the spiritual work, or weren't you were doing construction, right?
I went back to State College.
Yeah.
Went back in my brother-in-law's business, building homes. But I started a ministry at Penn State with international students. There was kind of one there already. Kind of started another one, and I lived there for about probably like 4 years. Then I worked in a church there, did the international ministry there, and that's when I took a trip to India. And on my way back from India, I stopped in Europe, and that story I just alluded to. I saw Dennis there. Dennis introduced me to Michelle. My side of the story is Michelle fell in love right away. If you ever have her on a podcast, she can tell her side of it. And so I met her, and man, from that time, 11 months later, we were married. A couple years into our marriage, we moved to North Carolina. Where we lived was next to JARS. Used to stand for Jungle Aviation and Radio Service, part of Wycliffe Bible Translators. Kind of got in there. Michelle always wanted to go into missions. Got into Wycliffe, became missionaries, went to Republic of Congo, served there, 4-year term, came back. That's when we lost Bryce, started Freedom Life Center.
Yeah, so let's go back to the missions trip to Africa. I remember you saying this whenever you talk about your story and your missions work. At that point, before going, you said, I think you had nothing, right? You said you guys just didn't have anything. You sold all your stuff.
You mean when we went as a family?
Is it? Oh, so you went multiple times?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we
go ahead. Take me through this then.
When we became missionaries as a family, Michelle and I and Brett and Brock, we were living in North Carolina. And so one of the things you do is, you can't, we don't want to put everything in storage and pay for storage for 4 years. So we had sort of a garage sale and we sold everything we had. We kept 2 suitcases apiece. Now, Michelle did save a couple things like her wedding dress and her mom's rocking chair and a couple of small things like that. But other than that, we got rid of everything we had. But I told you, it was one of the most freeing times of my entire life.
Yeah. Why was that? What do you think?
Because you don't have any of these attachments in the world. Like now, you worry about your car and your house, all your possessions, And when you have none of those things, see, we think, I know this is a cliche saying too, but we think we have possessions, but a lot of times our possessions have us, and we serve those things. Work so hard to keep paying our mortgage and paying our cars and insurance and everything, and so when all that was gone, there was no ties to anything. It was so easy, and we just picked up, the 4 of us, and we got on a plane and we flew to France and, went to language school, and from there we flew to Africa. And, every time we left, there was nothing we were leaving behind. It was just us. We took our clothes with us, and that was it. So it was really freeing. I tell people all the time, you've heard me say in church, we were in Africa. We didn't have anything. We didn't have not one TV. Now I have 5 TVs in my house. There's only 4 of us. I have 5 TVs. How is that? Already we're back accumulating things, right?
I got the cough, it seems. What have there been, like looking back, what have there been anything holding you back from potentially making that decision to go there?
Well,
any like fears or doubts about it? You know what I mean?
No. I think since Bible college for me and Michelle, that was all we wanted to do. We were single-minded. Mm-hmm. We just knew that's what we were going to do. We were going to do it one day.
Was it like a weird point in your life though, where it was like a fork in the road? Like you had stuff going on back here that was going well, and this came up.
Yeah, actually, when we were in North Carolina, I was in construction, but I had got in with a company out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I was doing work for Best Buys, and it was very lucrative. And I was doing that, and they were going to be taking on another big, large store, and I was going to pick up that too. So in that sense, it was kind of like a choice. Hey, the opportunity's before us now, do we make the opportunity, or life's kind of good right now? But it really wasn't hard for us to make the decision at all, because this is all we ever wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And so it was easy for us to say no to that and leave that and go, because it was where our heart was. We so wanted to go to Africa. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't difficult. What keeps people from going a lot of times are like the financial ties here. You're in debt, you have mortgages and stuff that you can't very easily get rid of, or credit card debt, things like that. And we didn't have any of that. So it was easy for us to kind of close up shop here and head off.
So so you go in there, what do you think? Actually, can you just take me through like the day-to-day stuff that you were doing in Africa? Like what's like the traditions, like the culture, like how would you like best describe that?
Oh, you asked a couple different questions.
Okay.
That's okay. I'm trying to think which one to tackle first. So the day-to-day stuff, we were with Wycliffe Bible Translators in Africa. The sister organization over there is called SIL, S-I-L. It used to stand for Summer Institute of Linguistics. Now it's just not an acronym anymore. It's just the name SIL. And so we got seconded to that organization. And I was the director of SIL's work in the Republic of Congo. We did Bible translation work. We worked with the government. We worked with universities. Wycliffe's SIL is always invited in by the local government, always, no matter what country it is. We don't go unless the government invites us in. And so I was the director for my time there over the work there, overseeing the translation work. I wasn't a translator. I worked with expatriate staff along with Congolese staff, and kind of oversaw all that. So day to day was a lot of going to the office. We SIL had bought the old Korean embassy there in Brazzaville in Congo. We lived on the center. There was apartments there, so our office was. So day to day, I would go to work, and my closest friend there was my kind of right hand man. His name is Rock Bankusu, and just a very very dear man, very very good friend of mine. I still miss him, and him and I would talk about the interesting thing about. So the other question you asked me was about culture. Even though we learned about Africa, going over there, you kind of forget sometimes. And I'll never forget, I would go in the morning sometimes and sit down with Rock, and I was, okay, Rock, this is what we have to do today, and I kind of line out the day. And he would sit there real patiently and listen to everything I had to say. And after I was done, he would look at me and he would say, in French, we spoke in French, and he said, Jeff, how are you? I go, I'm good. How's Michelle? And that's what you do. You start off your day like that. You start off relationally,
not getting straight into the work like that.
Well, the idea is how can we work at that level of business if we're not connected interpersonally? That's kind of the way I put it, right? And so you start out by, how are you doing? Out in the village, it would go as far as, how are your goats? How are the goats doing? But we would talk. I'd ask about my family. I'd ask about his family, make sure everybody's okay. If there was an issue, we'd talk about it, kind of work through it. And sometimes we'd sit there for 10 minutes. Sometimes it might be an hour just talking about these things. And after we were done, you felt yourself in a good place, right? Yeah. And you felt yourself ready. I'm going to be working with him all day long, and I feel good now. I feel good. Because he cares about me and I care about him. And now we can kind of tackle the things of the day. Because here's the thing, no matter what we're doing in life, let's face it, those initial things, those are the things that are most important. It may seem like all the work-related stuff is the most important, right? But in the end of the day, that's the most important stuff. And so why wouldn't you start out with the most important things? I missed that here.
True. Yeah. So I guess to play off that a little bit, I remember talking with you. We were at Buffalo Wild Wings. I'll never forget this.
We eat a lot together, don't we?
Yeah. I asked you something about Africa. It was essentially, why aren't they as advanced as us? And in terms of, and then I asked, is it just lack of resources? What is it? And then you came back. Do you remember your response to me on that?
I know what I would say now. I don't know what I said then. What did I say?
It was, you're assuming the way they live is less advanced than how we are.
That's how I would answer it, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's true, right? That's what you are assuming.
Right. Yeah, right.
You're assuming that their way of living isn't as, advanced is a good word, but let's face it, it's not as good as the way we live, because we're Americans. They don't live as good as we do. And what does that mean? Well, they don't have the cars that we have, and the houses that we have, and air conditioning that we have, and all those amenities. But is that really what builds life? Is all the amenities? There's a saying in Africa, Africans say about America. In America, you have watches, but here we have time. I like that because they do. They take time for one another. Rock, I could tell you so many things about Rock. One of the things about Africa is men in Africa, to show their relationship, is they'll hold hands. Here in America, might go a place where that's frowned upon, or that has a certain connotation. But there'll be times when I would walk Rock, back to his house, because we'd be talking, and he would reach out and kind of grab my hand, and we would walk. And I love this about our relationship. We would get halfway to his house, and he would stop.
And how long was this?
It was probably a couple 4-mile walk to his house. After about 2 miles, about halfway, he would stop. And that would signify that I could go home, right? Because you walk somebody halfway. So even like today, when people come over to my house.
You do it, yeah.
Yeah. I don't let them walk out the door by themselves. I always walk them out to their car. And that's kind of, I learned that through my time in Africa with Rock, that, I'm not going to ride in a car with him halfway home, of course, but that's something little I can do. I'm going to see them out. I'm going to see them home, walking them out to their car.
So from that, essentially saying they are probably more advanced in the things that are important, like relationships, right? As opposed to us being more advanced technologically or whatever, you know what I mean? Financially.
I'm not sure the verbiage we should use when trying to distinguish between cultures, right? As far as advanced, not advanced, they're not advanced technologically like we are. But they're growing in that, I mean, we had internet over there and they know how to use a computer, and I can get on Skype and I could talk to Rock right now. So they have those things. And to be honest with you, there's probably not an African that wouldn't, maybe have a dream of, wow, a good life in America because of what they think or hear or whatever. But when you come right down to it, no matter where you are in the world, people are the most important thing, no matter where you are. And you can either make that your most important thing here or in Africa, or you can make it not the most important thing here or in Africa. So it's still a choice you have to make, and I think in a lot of ways, maybe Eric, in Africa, they are maybe forced into that a little bit. Right? They say like the social security system in Africa is your network of friends, because there's no, governmental social security. So if you get into trouble, you go to your network of friends. So you're kind of forced into it. Whereas here, we don't rely on each other much anymore here. We rely more on the government here than we rely on, one another. If we get into trouble, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And as a society, I'm not talking about you or me, but as a society, we think it's the government's job to do that. Well, in Africa, the government's not going to do it. So they rely on each other. So in that sense, maybe they're forced into it, and they build those relationships, and they, I think that, as technology comes, like it's coming to Africa, I think maybe it squeezes that out. I hope that it's not lost. And I hope that we can gain it back. One of the things, I try to promote all the time here at church is communities. And we do so many things to try to force people into community, right? Right. And I know it's kind of contrived, but I just know how important it is. So we do meal groups and we put people together, and we have get-togethers and all different kind of stuff to try to get people more in community. I'm not sure when it changed. When did it change here in America, when we went from front porches to back porches, right? Front porches where there was a time in America where everybody knew their neighbors. It was nothing for you to walk into your neighbor's house and, just walk in, go borrow some sugar from them and, know about their kids and no time their kids come home from school and, all that kind of stuff. Now we moved to back porches and we have fences around our backyards and we pull in our garage doors, put our garage doors down, and we live these private lives. And I think we're missing out.
Yeah. What, is there anything else, like, is there one thing that maybe sticks out that you miss most about Africa? I know you mentioned like a few things just throughout, like little things that you've taken from there and bring here, and things that you think about. But is there anything that like really sticks out, or one thing you miss most?
Well, just some of my friends.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I know it sounds kind of simplistic, but it's just true. It's my friends there. And my friends were Rock. He was my right-hand man. Truth be known, he was really the director, even though I was director in name. When I left, I named him director, and he's still director to this day, which he should have been all along. I mean, he's a Congolese. He knows the culture. He knows I always had to go to him when things happen. What does this mean? How do I handle this? What do I do here? And he would tell me, and I would go do those things,
Yeah.
So for me, it's just the people, even the guards we had at the center and the workers. And I miss them. I miss them most of all.
Yeah.
And then I think too, I miss, I'm going to use a term that Pete and I joke about now, like the simple life. It was a simple life, but don't get the idea that a simple life is easy to live. You know what I'm saying? Not simple in that sense.
Yeah.
It's hard living that way.
Yeah.
I mean, Michelle would go shopping like almost every single day because the stuff that you bought, if it wasn't eaten that day, it's going to go bad. So the simple life can be a little difficult, but that kind of difficult living, I don't know, something about it as well, something, satisfying, maybe I could put it that way, of most of your day was spent just living, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I mean, we didn't have water. If the power went out, which power went out a lot, and have water, we always had to have a reserve of water in our house, and you'd take a bath, like a bucket bath sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And we had all the water we drank had to be filtered. You had to wash laundry by hand. So a lot of times, most of your day was spent just living, and then you had to go to work and try to get some work done as well.
So you're like day to day like focused then, right? As opposed to like looking weeks down the line. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, it is fair to say. But my job, on the other hand, was one of, there were 63 languages, I think 63, in Republic of Congo, over 270 in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So there was always this idea that, listen, we wanted to do translation work in a lot of these languages. So you had to be looking down the road. You constantly had to have a big vision.
Yeah.
But every single day you're thinking, what are we going to eat today? We have to go shopping today. So I think both were happening at the same time.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
I know I've asked you this before. I found it pretty interesting. When did you, like the safety, when did you feel safe and unsafe there?
I don't think I ever felt unsafe.
Okay.
To be honest with you. Now, before we got there, Republic of Congo had gone through, I think, 3 civil wars in 5 years. So it wasn't a very stable place when we got there. But I never really felt, once you start living in a place, you get used to it. I'm not saying that it always was safe. That's not what I'm saying. But there's a difference between feeling safe and being safe, because civil war could have broke out at any time. Mm-hmm. Bad things can happen at any time. But isn't that true of here too?
Yeah.
I mean, just look what just happened here in Pittsburgh at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Things can happen anytime, anywhere. So I could ask you the same question: do you feel safe?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you'd say yeah, but we know that something bad could happen at any given moment. So same way in Africa, we felt safe. Does that mean we were, as safe as we could be? There was one time when I was away. A lot of the staff was away in Cameroon, in Yaoundé, and Michelle was home with the kids, and some of the other moms that had kids in school had to stay home. Well, there was a little uprising from an old ex-leader in Republic of Congo that came out of the forest and came into the marketplace and caused some havoc, and people were killed, and we were away. There's nothing we can do. And so they were in lockdown on our center. And so it was kind of a scary time then, Mm-hmm. And I probably felt the most unsafe then, even though I wasn't there because my family was there and there wasn't anything I can do about it.
Yeah.
But that was only one time that happened.
So take me through your decision to leave Africa, come back here.
Well,
because it wasn't just like a one-time decision, right? You came back.
Well, what happens is when you're a missionary, you typically do a term. It could be 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. So we did a 4-year term because we went to language school first. We went to France first. So after 4 years, you come home and just kind of some recouping time and to visit your supporters, because mostly you have churches and people that support you in the work over there, because you're not allowed to work over and for employment. For gainful employment in another country like that, unless you have the proper visas, which we didn't have that kind of visa. So you have support. So you come back and talk to your supporters. Well, we came back for that reason. So they call it a furlough. It was a 1-year furlough. When we came back, that's when Michelle was pregnant. And so we thought, well, we're going to have our third child. And we came home and everything was going good. My very good friend, Daryl Nath, allowed us to stay in his house. He had a house, the farmhouse over mm-hmm. there. And we stayed there and, traveled around and it came time to have the baby. And we went to the hospital and, of course, the story. The doctor couldn't find the heartbeat and the baby had had passed away, and Michelle had to deliver a stillborn baby. And so it's because of that. So I told you about my father dying and how that really kind of changed the trajectory of my life. Mm-hmm. Right. It made me put me on a quest for more in life. And that's when I became more aware, or maybe not even more aware, maybe just aware, period, that I'm a spiritual being. Now, I went to church, so I'm not talking about going to church. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about there being something more. And I became aware that there's more to life than just what I was currently living. Mm-hmm. So it put me on a quest. And that's when I really kind of came into a understanding of a divine being in a real sense, not in a religious sense, because I told you I went to church, and I believe in God, but it was more than believing in God. It was a deep connection with the divine. And so that, because of that loss, I found kind of my place. I found my connection to God. Mm-hmm. So now fast forward with Bryce, when we lost him, it was my second bad day, put me on another quest in you know my story a little bit, so I'll just share a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I was raised a certain way after that time of who God was. I was told kind of who God was. And so after you're told for so long who God is, you begin to believe that's who God is, and you just live accordingly. And you know, I have a Bible right here in front of me, and listen, you could find anything you want in here to support. It's called proof texting, to support, you know, how what God is like. Mm-hmm. And so when we lost Bryce, I remember thinking, you know, this isn't the way it's supposed to work. You know, here I am, I'm a missionary, you know, and I know bad things happen to good people, but surely, you know, I'm a missionary. That's like the top of the totem pole, right? And that's right. What I was thinking. I'm not saying I think that now, but you know, that's the kind of top of the totem pole. If God's gonna bless anybody, He's gonna bless me, because this is what I'm doing. I'm sacrificing my family. We're in Africa, and you know, surely God does good things to these kind of people,
right?
And so when we lost a son, I thought, something's wrong here. Something's wrong with my relationship with God. I didn't know what it was. I was pretty sure it wasn't him, right?
Yeah.
But I still thought it was maybe something about him. I don't know. And I remember just saying, "Okay, God, something's wrong here in my understanding of who you are, because this doesn't make sense to me." And so what I did, kind of on my own, no one knew about this, but I began to just kind of start afresh and just question everything. Because one thing I was kind of told, so not told, more implied, you know, certain things you don't question. That's mm-hmm. just the way they are. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to question everything. Nothing's going to be off the table. Because if it's true, it's going to stand. If it's not, then I'll just drop it for now, and I'll come back to another time. And what happened to me through that is I came to a better understanding of who I am, what I wanted, how I was living with God before, and who God really was. Those three things, and I'll explain. I began to realize who I am in terms of my relationship with God, that I'm loved. Mm-hmm. Right? That I'm deeply loved. And then, probably more importantly, I began to think about what I was in this for with God. And what I came to discover for myself was, I didn't really love God like I learned He loved me. I think I loved more for what I was maybe told or just believed that He would do for me. One of those things was keep me out of hell.
Yeah.
I was told that. And so, wow, if that's your choice, go to hell or believe in God. I don't know too many people are going to go, I'll choose hell. Right? They choose God. And so, in a sense, I did that.
Yeah.
And then I chose Him because of the good things He could do for me. And maybe that's in part why I became a missionary. You know, if I kind of quid pro quo.
Yeah.
I do for you, do for me. And so when we lost Bryce, I began to say, I don't think that my understanding of who you really are is right. And I've been living in a wrong motive for my relationship with you. So I began to try to strip everything away and say, God, I just want to know you. I know you love me. I just want to love you back. I don't even know how to love you that way. So I began to like really change, really understand how much God cares for me and how much through those times that God was with me and seeing me through those times. Even if I didn't acknowledge his help, he was there helping me through the difficult times in life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought he was there to take me out of those difficult times. And at least that's what I wanted. And he helped me through them. And those are the things that build character in your life. So he helped me through those difficult times and helped me through that time of losing Bryce. And it's through that process that I never gave up on God, but I kind of gave up on, I hate to even say it, but church a little bit, because here I am pastoring a church. I kind of gave up on, not God, but just church, because I saw church as not the place to really understand who God was. That's a shame.
Right.
And I think a lot of young people today feel that the exact same way.
True.
You know, yeah, I'm spiritual, but why don't you go to church? Why would I go to church? Well, that's where you find out about God. No, I don't think so. You know, it's a kind of a weird disconnect. But I had that same disconnect. And then I thought, well, you know, I don't exactly know how it happened, but I felt like maybe I wasn't supposed to go back to Africa.
That was the plan, right?
Yeah, I was go back to Africa.
Yeah.
We were going to go back to the other Congo, the Republic of Congo. And decided that we're going to stay here. Told Michelle that. Told her I thought I wanted to start a church. And she thought that was bizarre, which I never saw myself as a pastor of a church. I guess I kind of still don't see myself that way. But called up a couple of friends of mine, real close friends. My one friend down in Texas, Jeff, and my friend Chris up in Michigan. Asked them, you know, I'm gonna tell you something that I think I'm gonna do, and you react to it. You know, tell me what you think of it. I told them I think about starting a church, becoming a pastor. I fully expected both of them to say, well, I never saw you as a pastor. I always saw you as a missionary in Africa. That's who you are, Jeff. That's what I expected to hear. And I didn't hear that. I heard them both say, oh yeah, I could totally see you doing that. I could totally see you being a pastor. And so I thought, well, you know, maybe I'll give it a shot. And so with the help of my good friend Daryl Nath, you know, we started out a church in the house and eventually bought this building we're sitting in right now. And, you know, Freedom Life Center is what it is. Don't know that I really still call myself a pastor, but I love doing what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I could tell. I remember, I guess in this podcast, I'm doing a lot of remembering here.
It's all right.
Because,
we've had a lot. I always thought it was going to be your second podcast. How many am I? It's been a couple of years now, hasn't it? We've been talking about doing this podcast for forever.
Oh, yeah.
But are these mics even on? I don't even know if this is even real.
I remember you explaining the story prior of how you started the church, and whenever I think whenever people would ask you, like, yeah, did you always think it was going to be a success, or did you always see it as a long-term thing? And I remember hearing this back. So this was maybe when I was in like college, maybe a little unsure myself too, a little lacking in confidence. But you would say, yeah, I always knew it would work. I always knew it was going to work out. It was going to be a good church. It was going to be successful. Why that mindset, or where does that come from? Because whenever I heard that, like, I'm like, wow, like, I just wish I could like think like that about whatever I do. Like, whatever I'm gonna do, yeah, it's gonna work out. I'm gonna do it, and I'll figure it out. I think the more I've been doing things, I feel that way more and more. But like, I think that was hearing that from you was probably a big part into why I do think that way. Because I was like, wow, I want to have that mindset. How do I do it? Obviously, I've spent a lot of time with you, so I've gotten your, I guess, habits or rituals or just how you think. So
Yeah, I think that's really good, Eric. I appreciate that you saying that. I don't know. I don't even think it's something that I just developed. Maybe I just have a confidence, a belief in myself that if I put my mind to it, I could do it. Maybe that's what it is. I'm not exactly sure, but
because me just looking back, like you hadn't started a church before, had no idea how to be a pastor, but just
I guess this may be a drawback at some point, and maybe it even is now a little bit. But I tend to never look at like the negatives or why I can't. Like if someone were to say, well, what about this, this, and this? I go, I don't know. I guess I'll deal with those when they come. I never think of those things. And one thing about me, Eric, too, is that I've always been someone who is very good at starting new things, new initiatives. Even Wycliffe, I told you about a little bit before, they came up with this assessment of me, and they said Jeff is a kind of a man with a plan. In other words, he has an idea, he's going to run with it, and he always needs to be involved in new initiatives, not so much in the detail of it and seeing it through. Well, it sounds like a bad thing, but it's really not, because you have starters and you have finishers. You have all different kind of people in life. That's what makes teams so great. You have, if you had every single person on your team with the same skill, you wouldn't get much accomplished. So you need a team with all these different kind of skills, right? And so I happen to be a starter, an initiator, because I don't think of the failure, the what ifs. I just don't think of the what ifs. I don't think they're going to happen. I think of all the things that are. So when I did this assessment that I told you about, when they handed it to me and I read it, they said Jeff needs to be always been involved in new initiatives, and don't put him there at the end where the detail work, you're going to burn him out that way. And I read that and I was thinking, wow, that's like the best, the most concise definition of me that I've ever read. I go, but how did you know that? They said, well, you told us that. I go, what do you mean I told you that? When they interviewed me, she said, all you talked about is all the things you started. You started 2 businesses. You started international ministries. You started, all these different things, right? And so it's just easy. That's what excites you. That's what gets you going. The beginning stages, the innovation, the big picture, the challenge, the starting things. Not one time in a conversation did you tell me, how are any of those things going right now? Not one time. No idea. They still going? Did they close up or what? That's not what excites you. It's those new things that excite you. So I guess I don't know that it's like for you, I think it's awesome that you made a decision to be that way. I think that's more admirable probably than me. I didn't make any decision that to be that way. That's just kind of the way I am. I'm kind of, maybe made that way a little bit. But you, on the other hand, to see that and going, I want to be like that. I think I didn't know that about you. That's great. It really is. I mean that.
No, thank you. So I guess I'll get into like this type of stuff. Through like all you've done. So, I mean, your story, you got all these different things going on. Traveling, starting businesses, starting ministries. What, just looking back, like how do you just view your run, your story? Like what, I don't even know how I want to phrase this, just your perspective going back, like you're a pastor now. Do you ever just think like, man, I've done a lot, like a lot that a lot of people like never have. But then do you also look at like potentially the material type of things? Like I remember you saying that sometimes I don't rub 2 nickels together. Like how do you view just your path, your life up to this point?
I think it goes back to what I was just telling you about, is I tend to see things optimistically. And so I guess I don't look at the negative side of things. Not that I'm some great person that I don't, what I mean? It's just part of my personality.
Yeah. I
don't look at the glass is half empty. I don't look at what I don't have or what I should have, what I might have. I just don't look at it that way. I always live I'll never forget, I did one sermon series, and one of the things I said at the end of every single message was, the best is yet to come to everybody. The best, I have to believe that. The best is yet to come, even in my life, right? As good as my life has been to this point, I still think the best is yet to come. My boys are going to, grow and get married and have jobs and grandkids, and the best is yet to come. I'm looking forward to, whatever comes next. I'm not going to, I can't keep moving forward. I told you before, drive forward, look in the rearview mirror, right? I can't, I've had a lot of great experiences. I've been all over the world, and it's amazing because I don't have huge, I don't have a lot of wealth to be able to do that kind of stuff, but somehow, I was able to, Brent and Brock have been places most kids have, never been.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember talking to Steve about, like, I think you were just coming up in the conversation, and he's like, look at Jeff, man. Like, he's done things no one else has in their life and never will do. Like the experiences you've had, the people you connect with, like that's something to take note of. It's impressive.
Yeah. So I think it's, as I look back, I've been, as far as like friendships go, I've lived a charmed life. I have some of the best friends ever. I really do. But I go back to, to have a friend, you got to be a friend, and that's one thing I do work at. I work at my friendships a lot. I'm out. If there's one thing I try to be intentional at is that, work at all my friendships. So, and then, Eric, I think, for anybody, I tell any young person, tell you, how I talk to you, the best is yet to come. Like you have so much potential in your life. You have so much opportunity in your life. You have a lot of life ahead of you, and life's going to be great. It's going to be awesome.
So how, this is something no one actually knows about. We did that road trip podcast because I never released it. I guess I'll explain it. Jeff was taking these two kids from Britain that came over to visit, taking them from Pittsburgh down to DC. They were doing like a little U.S. tour, and he invited me to come along. So I came for the trip, and we did like our own little podcast in the car.
I forgot about that. That's right.
I asked you the question I ask most people: how do you define success? And you said you'll save it for this. So. I've heard a lot of. I heard you ask a lot of people that question. I heard a lot of different responses, and obviously there's not one right answer to that question, right? Like for me, success is wrapped up in the quality of the relationships of my life, and that can always be worked on and improved on, right? And so success to me is, I love friendships. I love relationships. And I can't think of anything worse than going through life and not having friends to go through life with. Like to me, that for me, I'm not saying for other people, for me, that would be failure, right? That would be failure. Success to me is then the quality of my friendships. Now, of course, there's different areas, right? Different areas of your life or whatever. Yes, what's success in a church or what's success but just in my own personal life, right? And when I say in my relationships, I'm not talking about just in friends. I'm talking about my boys. The quality of my relationship with my boys. I want that to keep getting better and better. The quality of my relationship with my wife. Am I successful? I tell you what, I want to be more and more successful by that definition, right? More and more successful. I want to have a better relationship with my wife every single day, with my kids, and that by extension to all my friends around me. Then, because here's the thing, for me, when you ask about success, and on my deathbed, if you could ask me that question, has your life been a success? I certainly am not going to talk about my accomplishments or my, how much money I made or how big my house is. Because what does any of that mean?
But I think, by the people that are around me at that time, the people that I loved, the people that loved me, yeah, that's success.
Well, it's crazy too. I remember you talking about this in a sermon. We've talked about it before. Just the impact one person can have. Mm-hmm. One, you just being there for someone or putting yourself out there, sharing your story, because who knows like what impact you could potentially have on the world right now. I'm not trying to like pump myself up or anything, but like you being with me, who knows what person may listen to this podcast or just even an episode of this podcast and become impacted because of that. But I started this podcast. Big reason is probably because of you and other mentors I have in my life, Pete, Steve, like, you know what I mean? So that's impact. That's the type of stuff you're right with the deathbed. And,
here's the thing, Eric, all of us influence other people's lives. The question is, what kind of influence are you going to be? That's why, so Eric, works with the youth here at church, and you're doing a great job, Eric, but I always tell you, there are young people looking up to you, and my son's one. So to be careful how you live, because they're looking up to you because they want to be like you. So I think it's important, it's so important how we live, because the influence that we have over others in our life. I remember one time, what's the basketball player? Dennis Rodman. You remember Dennis Rodman?
Yeah.
They were interviewing him one time, and that's when he was, dressed like Madonna, wearing a dress or whatever, and had tattoos everywhere and everything. And they said something about him being a role model. Do you remember that? He said, I'm nobody's role model. I'm just my own person. I'm nobody's role model. And the thing about that is that you don't choose to be a role model, do you? Somebody chooses you. It's like you don't go around saying, I'm going to be your role model. He can't say he's not a role model. He probably is to somebody. Somebody's chose him to look up to him to be a role model. The question is, what kind of role model are you going to be? That's why I always tell you, hey, you're Brock's role model. You're one of Brock's role models. Be careful how you live, because you're influencing his life. That's my son. Mm-hmm. Like, you have influence over him, right? How will you use your influence, right? And so I think all of us need to be mindful of that. How do we use the influence that we have? How do we use it?
Yeah. So with your story, how you grew up from 18 through your early 20s into 30s. It was you probably say unconventional, right?
Probably. Well, my dad died when I was 18, so I was kind of on my own.
Yeah.
At that point, I didn't go to college right away. I started selling life insurance at 18.
Yeah.
I mean, you're 25 starting to sell life insurance. You probably even feel a little young now to be talking to. Maybe you go see a man in his 50s that has kids, and you're trying to talk to him about insurance plans.
Absolutely.
You feel a little intimidated, right?
True.
At 25.
True. Yeah.
And I was 18. Like, I didn't know anything. And so you feel a little.
And then you do the Bible college, 25, 26, and then you don't get married till 35. So what advice do you, like, knowing all that, what advice do you give someone, say like me, your sons, someone coming into their early 20s or just graduating high school, college, about how to think about life? What should they be looking for? Just anything in general, like life insights. What would you how would you guide them, I guess?
Well, I should ask you that. How have I tried to guide you, or even my boys?
Well, the one I remember sitting down with you. One of the things you said is, how do you want your life to look in 10 years? Like what things are you doing now? Like,
right.
All right, you want this, then how do you make that happen? Like,
what are you doing now to achieve that? So different thing. Like I'll ask Brent and Brock. Certainly I want them to, like I shared earlier. I want them to use they're gifted in certain ways, and you want to move and live in your giftings. And so what is it that you're passionate about? What is it, Brock now loves, music. He's just, in art. Well, that's a passion. You shouldn't just let that go. You should, try to expand that and see where might that go. Mm-hmm. Both of them are good in science and math. Hey, well, why not? Brent's doing that in college now, math and computers. And so I think the thing is that every life is different. Every life has its own path. So the question you're asking me is, how do you help guide somebody along a path, which is the big question, right? How do we do that? How do you, as a 25-year-old, talk to Brock, who's thinking about going to the college next year? How do you don't say, well, I did it this way. I went to this college and you should go to this college. Of course you don't do that, because that was your life. So how do you guide him? How do you say, you try to give him good underlying principles, right?
Yeah. And,
I believe in having something to shoot for, right? That way, not that you're going to, you're going to do that exact thing, but it's easier to move and change when you're going in a direction than you're standing still. So like for the boys, I tell them, what are you good at? What do you love to do? What's your passion? I think I shared with you one time, talking about, what gets you up in the morning? What gets you up in the morning? Because if it's a job and you're going to do it for a long time, I love what I do now. I love, being part of a church, pastoring a church. I love talking to people. I love, because I'm a relationship person, right?
Yeah.
And so when I get up in the morning, I look forward to that. And so what gets you up in the morning? What gets you going? Mm-hmm. I think those kind of questions. I think that's what it is more than anything, Eric, is just asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Right. And letting people.
It seems like you got to experience, you got to live, right? You got to test things out and see. I guess that's how you find out, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how else do you know?
Yeah.
Unless you try something, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, hey, I really appreciate you coming on here. Do you have any just like last words of wisdom, anything you want to shout out?
I think what I said before, I think the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
I believe that for me. I believe that for you. I believe that for our church, for my family, for my friends. I honestly do. It's not just a saying. I actually do believe it, that the best is yet to come. Right? And if everybody could get in that mindset, can you imagine if you woke up today and say, today is going to be better than yesterday?
Yeah.
As good as yesterday might have been, today's going to be better. Right? Because the best is yet to come.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, appreciate you guys for listening, and stay chilling. Peace.